I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's talk about the Ukraine parliament elections. It looks like President Zelensky has received a mandate from the people, I would say. His party came out on top in the parliamentary elections, and he's got a mandate to, it looks like, to settle the conflict in the east, in Donbass, and to try to find some sort of dialogue, rapprochement, whatever you want to call it, with Russia, ease the tensions. Do you think that's the mandate that he has received from the people? That's the way I look at it. Are you looking at it from the same perspective?
Unequivocally, I don't have any doubt about it. I think when people voted for Zelensky as president, they voted for him because they thought that he was someone who could deliver peace with Russia. He is a Russian speaker. He has spoken in Russian. He has spoken about having direct negotiations with the Russians and with the people who have been fighting the previous Ukrainian Maidanist regime in the Donbass, and they see Zelensky as the person who will sort that out, bring peace to Ukraine, which it is now overwhelmingly clear, unequivocally clear, is what the vast majority of Ukrainians want. And if we unpack that that presidential election, he got 75% of the vote. Poroshenko, the war president, the nationalist president, the president the West backed, he got only 25. Now, in this parliamentary election, it was even worse. Poroshenko's party crashed to just 8% of the vote. It came fourth behind Tymoshenko's party, which only got Tymoshenko being another Ukrainian nationalist leader, but a rather more moderate one than Poroshenko. She got slightly more than him. But over the vast expanse of Ukraine, Zelensky's party swept the board, except importantly in the eastern regions where they speak Russian, where the dominant party is once again a pro-Russian, and I think we can use that word, a specifically pro-Russian party led by a man called Viktor Medvedchuk. In fact, there are two pro-Russian parties there which competed with each other, and they won between 50 and 60% of the vote. So Zelensky now has a clear mandate to pursue peace. He has a majority. His own party has, for the first time in Ukrainian history, a majority in the Ukrainian parliament. He doesn't have to enter into a coalition. The pro-peace majority in the Ukrainian party consists of around 70% of the people in that parliament. At least that's what they were elected. That's what they were elected on. Now, in theory, he has a democratic mandate to pursue peace. Will he do so? That depends on whether he keeps his nerve, is prepared to face down the ultra-nationalists who are still there. Many of them still have arms. Many of them are still talking about having another Maidan to overthrow him. If he's prepared to face these people down, he has the backing of the people behind him. He has the backing of the parliament behind him. I get the strong impression that the predominant feeling in Europe, and especially in Germany now, is that they also want peace. So this is the best moment for him to move forward. We will see. It's up to him.
What about the U.S., which under Obama, they're the ones that instigated the coup? Mm-hmm. Let's not forget Pyatt. Let's not forget Victoria Nuland, Samantha Power, and of course Obama himself, who sanctioned the coup d'etat in Ukraine, the Maidan 2014. But now you have Trump. Trump is not fond of propping up Ukraine. He was not fond of Poroshenko. He knew that the Ukraine government was actually meddling in the elections, the U.S. elections, on the side of Hillary Clinton. There's been a lot of connections with what the Ukraine was doing, the Ukraine embassy in the United States, and what they were doing in regards to Manafort and trying to smear Manafort and Trump and all these things, which we've covered in many videos.
Yes.
What do you think the U.S.'s position is going to be on Zelensky and the fact that he may actually move to create some sort of peace with Russia and with Donbass? Because I'm sure the neocons and the deep state in the U.S. is going to activate and work with the deep state in Ukraine to thwart those efforts?
You're absolutely right on both counts. I mean, the first thing to say is that the predominant forces within the US government, in the State Department, in the CIA, in the military, in the NGOs, in Congress, are still deeply committed to this Ukrainian project that they launched not in 2014, but even further back with the so-called Orange Revolution of 2004. This is very much the neocon agenda, and they're still committed to it. Donald Trump himself, who is the president of the United States, has no interest in it whatsoever. He has no interest in Ukraine. As you correctly say, he didn't like Poroshenko. He knows exactly what happened during the election and the role the Ukrainians played in sponsoring Russiagate. So the United States is divided about this. But my own guess is that not having the president fully on side with this neocon agenda in Ukraine is going to deprive it of a great deal of its force, even if there are hardliners in the State Department, in the CIA, and in the NGOs, and in the media who want to press on with it. So I think we are losing now the momentum behind this conflict that had existed before. And there is one good sign. There's one very good sign, by the way, which actually happened in Ukraine, which is that the Ukrainian security service, the SBU, seized a Russian ship in retaliation for certain things that happened in the Kerch Straits, which is this area, this strait between Crimea and Russia, which leads to the Ukrainian port of Mariupol. And the Ukrainian Secret Service seized the ship, and it was clearly, I think, something that was done by the anti-Russian hardliners in Ukraine in order to create tension. And almost immediately, the crew were released and allowed to go back to Russia and were not held as hostages in Ukraine, as many people expected. So the commentary about that in Russia has been that there's still conflict in Ukraine. There's still people pushing for confrontation with Russia, but that Zelensky intervened to bring this latest incident to a close, and the United States did not intervene and did not actually press and escalate this incident as it seemed as if it might have done, as it would have done a short while ago. So I am moderately hopeful. I think the steam has gone from this thing. I think it will take some time for all the pieces to fall into place, because the separation, the conflict between Ukraine and Russia has become so embittered. But it's quite clear what the Ukrainian people want. They do not support this confrontation with Russia. And I think that without that popular support and without the support of the Europeans, the way to peace is now starting to become clear.
Yeah, I think the Europeans don't have any interest in Ukraine anymore, that's for sure. But I also think that the people of Ukraine, the bubbles kind of burst for Europe as well. They see Brexit going on. They see a European Union in shambles, and the promise of Maidan, which was, you're going to come into Europe and right away you're going to be making 10,000 euros a month because Europe is this awesome place where, you do zero work and you bring home these big fat paychecks, was a complete and utter lie. I can tell that to you as a Greek and as a Cypriot, that we've been fed the same lies and they're not true. And I think the Ukrainian people understand this as well.
Yes.
And they see Brexit and they say, geez, there's countries in Europe that are actually trying to get out of the hellhole that is the European Union. So I think the Ukraine people are saying, we better mend fences with our big neighbor next door before we expect Europe to do us any favors. But Alexander, so you can address that issue. And I would also like you to address the energy interests that are at play, because there are some very real energy interests that are at play, that are being negotiated right now as we speak, and there's some very real deadlines that have to be met between Ukraine, Russia, Gazprom, etc.
Yes. Well, let's first of all deal with popular opinion. You're absolutely right, by the way. I mean, Ukrainians were promised the promised land when this connection with the EU was supposed to bring. The Ukrainian economy has gone into a tailspin. And by the way, despite some of the claims you read, it's almost certainly still contracting. And living standards are still falling. What the previous Poroshenko government used to do was it misreported the inflation figures. So it underreported inflation, which made it seem that the economy was growing, even though in reality it was actually contracting. It had a residual base of support in Kiev itself, and in Western Ukraine. But over the generality of Ukraine, people in Ukraine were not fooled. They could sense that things were getting worse for them. And I think it's a very important point always to remember when we're talking about Ukraine, that the Maidan regime that was led by Poroshenko, that got into this war with Russia, was never in a regime that gained power democratically through an election. It gained power through a violent coup d'etat in February 2014. The reason there was that coup, and the reason the anti-Maidan parties that at that time existed, the Communist Party and the Party of the Regions, were banned, was because the Maidanists, even at that time, were not confident that they had the majority of people in Ukraine behind them. They absolutely do not have them anymore. Now, Zelensky does have a timetable that is now a clock that is ticking, because he has got to agree a gas transit and supply deal with Gazprom, that's the Russian natural gas export monopoly, by the end of this year. Because if he doesn't, the Russians have clearly indicated that they will stop sending gas to Ukraine. Ukraine heavily depends on Russian gas. And if it doesn't get Russian gas after the end of this year, the economy will go into a tailspin. I mean, it will be a complete crisis, be a severe recession, and power cuts, and all kinds of other things. So he's got this timetable. Now, the Russians are able to do that because they're able to send gas to Germany via Nord Stream 1. Nord Stream 2 is likely to be finished. It's now 60% complete by the end of this year. And they've got other pipelines now being built in Southern Europe. So they are already less dependent on sending gas through Ukraine than they used to be before. So this gives the Ukrainians intense pressure to come to a deal with Russia. The other thing that Ukraine has is that there's a massive debt that now has to be repaid, because back in 2014, 2015, the IMF did this deal with Ukraine, which is, by the way, an illegal deal. I'm not going to get into the complexities of this.
By Christine Lagarde, who is
correct, Christine Lagarde, exactly. But it's an illegal deal. It actually violated the IMF's own legal procedures, but we'll talk about that. That's
another video, perhaps.
That's another video, perhaps. Yeah, it's a complicated one. And it involves an ongoing case in the British courts, which we can talk about at some point. But the point I'm trying to make is there was this deal done, and a lot of debt was rolled over in anticipation of a Ukrainian economic recovery, which has never happened. That debt is now crystallizing, and it can't be repaid. So Zelensky is facing the danger of a gas cutoff at the end of this year, And he's also facing a very real possibility of Ukraine facing a default situation next year. So there is a lot of pressure on him, and we will see how he responds. The only way he can get out of this mess economically is by coming to some kind of a deal with the Russians. And he has the electoral mandate to do it. He has a parliament which now supports him. He has a population which elected him to do that. What he's got to do, as I said, is face down the ultra-nationalists in Ukraine, who are admittedly a danger. But if he's going to succeed as president of Ukraine, he has to do that, or he will fail.
It's a very tough job, because those ultra-nationalists in Ukraine are the real deal. Once again, this is not, people in the U.S. who scream, white supremacist and Nazi around every corner. This is not that. These guys in Ukraine are the real deal. These are real fascists. These are real Nazis. These are real white supremacists.
Absolutely, they are real Nazis. I mean, some of them have swastikas tattooed on themselves. They're armed. They're armed in militias which have SS symbols. I mean, there are actually, Nazi militias fighting alongside the Ukrainian army. And of course, you have all these ultra-right neo-fascist groups like Right Sector, which hasn't gone away. And they're still there, and they've still got guns, and they're still violent people. And they're now again talking about staging a third Maidan to try to overthrow Zelensky and the new government, which has just been overwhelmingly elected by the Ukrainian people. Now, I think, as I said, with the people behind him, Zelensky does have the resources to face these people down. And I think that the Europeans, especially the Germans, would be horrified by another coup, which overthrew a democratically elected president. But can I just say, it will need courage on Zelensky's part to do that. And we will see whether he has it. I will finish on one optimistic note. A British journalist of my acquaintance, I won't say who, went to Ukraine recently and has told me that she sensed a tremendous groundswell of feeling amongst Ukrainian people desiring peace and ready to stand up to these violent people and seeking an end to it all. So that also gives me hope, and that Zelensky and the people around him are apparently aware that they do have that support. So we'll see. I'm reasonably hopeful.
Yeah, we've said it in past videos, Alexander, and we'll close it out on this point, that Ukraine cannot move on, cannot move forward as a country until it deals with these ultra-nationalist, violent gangs and violent paramilitary groups. I mean, they are organized, they are very dangerous, and they are very well armed. But it is time for Ukraine and the Ukraine government and the people to deal with these guys once and for all. Otherwise, they'll never be able to move forward. And every 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to have a Maidan 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just never going to end.
And the oligarchs, these very powerful and sinister oligarchs who back and manipulate these groups. They may not be fascists or Nazis themselves, but they have a history of manipulating these groups in order to keep the situation in constant chaos, which they benefit from, to prevent a strong government emerging that might reign the kind of things the oligarchs themselves do in. So we have this situation. But any state, if it is worth anything, must have a monopoly of force within its own borders. It must control the army and the police, and it must not have violent ultra right-wing, Nazi militias rampaging around with their own political agendas, which are so completely contrary to those of the state. That's what the state's now got to do in Ukraine. It's got to bring these people under control and break their power. It happened in Russia with Putin. Let's see if it now happened in Ukraine. The conditions have never been better.
All right, let's hope. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on the notifications bell to make sure you get notifications every time we push out a new video. You can get an audio copy of this video. Follow us on iTunes and Soundcloud. And please make sure to donate to us on PayPal, Patreon, and now Subscribe Star. Your donation really helps us out a lot. And you can also get an ebook, 2 ebooks, with a foreword by Alexander Mercouris, which covers Russiagate. Great ebooks, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They're great reading, I should say, and they've both got forwards. So, I mean, let's make it clear. Each book has a foreword written by me. One book covers the origins of Russiagate and the nature of what Russiagate actually was. And I mean, we have the sort of story of Russiagate, you know, all that nonsense about collusion. But as I explain in the preface and as we explain in the book, it was really all ultimately a plot by sections of the US deep state, the intelligence agencies and the rest, and the media, and Hillary Clinton's campaign, and the Democratic National Committee to peddle this nonsense about Trump being a Siberian agent in order first to make Hillary Clinton president, and then when that failed, to delegitimize Donald Trump. So that's what that's all about. And the second book is looking at Mueller's disastrous and out of control investigation and the way it was brought to an end by this new attorney general, a real attorney general, a lawyer of great ability and standing, William Barr, who came to the rescue of the Republic by bringing this insanity finally to an end and starting the slow return of the United States both to constitutional government and to a sense of reality rather than the sort of fantasies that we have been hearing so much about over the last 3 years. And these 2 books try and simplify the story, and in order to help you understand it, you can read these books, and while reading these books you can actually refresh yourself by having tea from a mug like this. We have all these wonderful Duran mugs, 15 ounces if I'm right, wonderful to hold, beautiful. They have this extraordinary luster, as I've said many times. The tea here, by the way, is Russian caravan tea, which is very appropriate because this mug has the crest of Russia's elite Alpha Force, which is their best special forces unit. So you've got these wonderful mugs, you've got wonderful shirts like this one, 100% cotton, beautifully patterned. That's our own double-headed eagle there, pointing to east and west, covering all the points of the geopolitical compass. So you can help yourself by reading our books, refreshing yourself while you do that by drinking tea or coffee or whatever you like from marvelous mugs like this. And you can feel comfortable and great while you do it by wearing our fantastic shirts. And we've got shirts like this one, we've got polo shirts, we've got T-shirts, all great T-shirts, all 100% cotton, and we've got hats, and we've got stickers, and we're getting all sorts of other amazing things coming out on our shop. So go to our shop, help the Duran, help yourself.
And there's a link to the shop in the description box down below where you can pick up our apparel and our magic mugs, which improve your geopolitical IQ by a good 100 points. And Alexander, in the ebook, I do think we have references to Ukraine and
yes,
how
we do.
Ukraine did meddle in the U.S. elections in favor of Hillary Clinton. Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We certainly do. We absolutely do. Of course,
so
we do.
That is an interesting story as well, which is
Yes.
a little bit connected to this video that we just did.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Alexander
Absolutely right.
Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.